Members of the company, this is your Places call. Places, please. Places for the top of the podcast. Places, please.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the glitz and not-so-glam of Broadway, education, and everyday life with Uncommon Sense. Join hosts Christopher Smith and Sharna Lopez as they bring you the best stories and shenanigans that seemingly prove how elusive common sense can really be. So take a little time for yourself to hang out with the dynamic duo Charnopher. And no leaving early, because you might just miss that 11 o'clock number.
Stand by music. Music, go.
Uncommon sense, the 11 o'clock number.
And we are Charnopher.
Hi, Charnopher.
That was crazy. Wait, that was crazy. Is that what it did on your guys' end? It went from 5 to 2 on my end.
It went from 5
I
to
saw
3
every
on mine.
number.
I was like, excellent. Since you are the guest, mystery guest, unless you're watching. Most people listen, so maybe you can guess his voice, but we haven't introduced him yet. I love that. It went from 5 to 2 on my end, so I sort of freaked out. My apologies. Charna fans, we have a guest today. We haven't had a guest in a while, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Christopher,
Same.
do you want to do the introduction? Or shall
sure.
I introduce?
I think we'll just do it together.
You could go.
I will say our special guest today is the one and only Jared. Now, there's many Jareds in our lives. This is the one and only Jared Machado.
Yes.
Machado.
AKA
Hello.
Jared
McAdoo. Yep.
McAdoo. Okay. No. Hold the phone.
Have you not heard that story?
No. It's time.
Okay.
Now is the time.
Hello, everyone.
Story number 1.
Yes, first story.
Number 1.
My last name's Machado, and for some reason, some systems from when I was in elementary school up till college treat it as a Scottish last name. So the MAC as the Mac, and then they capitalize the H, like most like Macallan or something like that, right? So it reads as Machado. So I get a lot of like Mikado, Machado. I've gotten a whole bunch of different pronunciations.
Yeah.
Then my senior year of high school, and all of those, I get it. The CH can be the K sound, and the Portuguese way to pronounce Machado is Machado. So depending on how you know the name, you're going to say it differently. My senior year of high school, we had a substitute teacher, and this sub calls my name and says, McAdoo? And I didn't know that she was calling me, so I didn't say anything. I just, McAdoo?
No.
And then I was like, Machado? So then I told Jeff Paul that story,
it's like that.
And it has stayed with me ever since.
Oh, that's what my husband calls Jared. Like when I'm like talking about Jared and he's like, oh, McAdoo. Like that's what he calls you, Jared, because I told him that story. I think in this substitute's defense, obviously D-O, lots of people, their brains look at that as do, right? But it's like that whole Aaron, right? That what's that skit or that YouTube thing when they're like,
Well, and like I said, it might have been capitalized.
Like, you mean
MAC with a capital H, So yeah, Mikado, McAdoo. I don't know.
I don't know, but McAdoo. I still refer to him as that sometimes, and definitely Jerry does. Well, first story down, but we didn't even really introduce him other than his name. So I feel like I would like to give Jared Machado McAdoo a proper introduction. Jared was a student at OSHA, and both Christopher and I had the pleasure of teaching Jared. We have so many stories from school, but the great thing is Jared went on to do a number of things in the industry. And Jared, we were kind of speaking about this right before we came on to record. I'm excited to have you today because, and I'm not saying this just because, I'm saying this genuinely. You're such a well-rounded, versatile human. And I think it's really interesting, especially for our podcast. You know, we have people who are in theater, and we talk about family stuff, or people who are musicians, and you do it all. And I think it's really, it has made you, and I have had the pleasure of watching you grow up. And I think seeing you try all these things, learn all of these different things. We'll get into stories, but you know, tap dancing, musical theater, songwriting, acting, playing guitar, playing piano, voiceover, you know, up to just even last year being in New York and doing an off-Broadway show. You've been all over, and I think it's really created a great human being. And I think it's going to take you a long way. Thank you very much.
That means a lot.
Which I love seeing when you have these little middle schoolers that you see and you're like, oh, this kid's something special. And then you're like, oh yeah, I was right.
Well, thank you. That means a lot.
So thank you for being here and taking time with us today.
I'm so excited to be here. Yeah.
I just love that Charna took that moment to pat herself on the back.
What? When? Oh, when I was like, because I knew?
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to pat myself on the back. That's not what I meant. I meant it's...
No, I know.
No, I meant it's nice to see the success. And to me, not the success in your career. I mean, as a person. I mean, Jared came back this year to OSHA to musically direct a show for us. He musically directed Charlie Brown. And it's so wonderful to witness that, to see, yes, super talented, knowledgeable, completely capable, but the type of person you are, especially with the students. That's what I was meaning. I wasn't patting myself on the back.
Oh, thank you again. I think so you can pat yourself on the back a little bit, for sure. You're both warranted that.
There you go.
Oh, thanks, Jared.
Oh,
I appreciate that. Christopher, what was your first experience with Jared? How did you guys meet? What show was it?
We met
or class
when Jared was in high school. It was a show, I believe. You said it was Pros, right? One of the first.
It had to have been Pros, because I knew you when. Yeah, we already knew each other when we did Guys and Dolls, and that was my senior year.
Yeah. So his junior year, apparently.
What show was your junior show?
Junior year, we did Urinetown, and that was a lot of fun.
And Christopher, you were not there for that yet.
No, that was Amy Harwell. So was it Guys and Dolls? I feel like I came into Guys and Dolls already knowing you.
Well, you know, I was kind of famous by the time I started there. So
once, but also, Jared, you were in so much in school. Like, you were so involved that, I mean, even if it was 1 year only, you did so much on campus and throughout, you know,
I was just
different
talking
organizations
about
on campus, for sure.
Because I tend to be healthy and on top of things whenever I am working. And the second I get any time off, my body starts to shut down and I get really sick. And I looked into it, and the reason why is your body gets used to cortisol levels of how much stress you're putting yourself under. And the second that those cortisol levels aren't what your body's used to, you're more susceptible to illness. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, I've had like at least 10 to 12-hour days since I was in 7th grade. So I mean, it's really been nonstop since I was 11 years old.
So Jared, thanks for doing some research on that, because I have also noticed that with myself, and I'm sure Charna has too. When you go, and then you stop, and it's like, and now I'm dead.
Yep.
I have fallen on the floor. Do not talk to me for 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. That happened most recently with my spring break.
And I think what's unfortunate with people who work like us, it's usually, like you just said, Jared, it's usually your vacation.
Yep.
And I hate that, because your body's finally trying to rest and trying to enjoy the time. And you're like, this is when I'm going to get sick. And that sucks. Oh,
it is almost without fail.
Hey.
Whoa.
So, friends, if you're watching, you know exactly what happened. If you're just listening, you may know we sound you may notice that we sound slightly different, possibly because we're now sharing a microphone. Hi, friends.
It's just Charnopher together in one space. Jared, you get to be the lucky winner of Charnopher together in a very adorable moment, sharing one
Wow.
microphone. This is how it really is. This is how we really work.
This is
I'm honored that I get to be the person that gets to experience
Also,
this. So thank
I
you.
know I mentioned it a little bit in the introduction, but I find it funny because Jared's done a bunch of voiceover work. He actually taught a voiceover class for me. So I know this is like, he's probably like, this is killing him quietly over in his.
he's like dying.
He's like, get it together. Just get it together. Okay. This is my voiceover setup. All right. This is what I have.
Oh man.
Fully dead. Jared is fully dead.
This is my
I know.
microphone. This is my.
He's so patient
it
and
right
kind.
here.
Look at him. He's like, okay, 30, 11-year-olds, you can hang out over there and be just fine.
Oh, good.
I'm
I will
30,
wait.
12. You're almost there.
That's true. Almost 30, 12. Jared, okay, I'm gonna flip it to you since clearly
Oh, wow.
Charnopher is over here in one little area. Can you, before I tell a million stories that I want to tell about you, or ask you some questions too, do you mind giving us a brief sort of little background on kind of how you got to where you are? I know you said you were talking about long days. You're like, ever since I was 11. You don't have to go play by play, but sort of just like a small
Yeah.
journey of how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so if you could just start with when your parents met and then how they got together, which how,
We'll just sit over here listening on your fancy
Great.
voiceover microphone situation.
All the way through childbirth up to today. Perfect. So I found out about OSHA when I was in 5th grade, and I wanted to be in commercial music for like popular voice. But that was only available to high school students. So my only options were integrated arts, musical theater, and classical voice. And at the time, I despised writing and visual arts. I couldn't do it to save my life. So I didn't go out for integrated arts because I knew I was going to have to do that. And I was like, I will be miserable if I have to spend my time at school doing art and writing for a grade. So I didn't submit for integrated. I didn't know any sort of operatic techniques or had even listened to an opera before. So classical voice was out of the question. So musical theater was the only choice available to me for middle school because I didn't like the school I was at. I wanted to be at OSHA. So I auditioned for musical theater. I didn't even know what the word monologue was before. So that was all brand new to me. I had never acted in my life. I went in, Jeff Paul was my adjudicator. And I came in with a monologue that Wendy Tabisca gave me. Actually, she had helped coach me for my audition. And I forget the name of the play. It was something like American Dreams or something like that. I can't remember, but I was this immigrant bellhop talking about like how he dreamed to like.
Wait,
I'm
Matt,
dead.
Stop.
You don't know what a monologue is, and you get the immigrant bellhop monologue. That is what.
Yep. Because I came into Wendy with the crabbiness survey monologue from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown.
Of course you
And
did.
Wendy said, no, every single child is going to be doing this monologue. You cannot audition for OSHA with this monologue.
Oh, that's great.
So she gave me that one instead. And then I remember Jeff in the audition asking me if I had ever done a monologue before.
It went that well.
I remember in the moment thinking, I know. In the moment, I remember thinking, well, that's it. I didn't get in. And then, of course, I found out that I did get in. And I still hadn't decided how I felt about acting yet. I had been playing pretend since I was 3 years old, all the way up until I left elementary school. I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, still playing pretend on the field with my friends, like imagination and imaginary play was like our favorite thing to do in our pastime. And so it's kind of crazy to me that I didn't really equate acting with imaginary play until I had my first acting class with Gemma Hebson. And it wasn't Gemma Hebson. It was Stephanie Dorian was my 7th grade acting teacher.
Love her.
And after having her class, I was like, whoa, what is this acting thing? This is really cool. And I decided to stay in musical theater because of the acting class that I had. And I'd always loved musicals before. My mom had showed me the movies West Side Story and Sound of Music very early on in my life. I grew up watching Disney films. So musical theater was a part of my life forever. I just didn't really realize that I enjoyed it as something that I could do until that first acting class. But I still got to do my popular music stuff through Montage, which I was lucky enough to join in 7th grade. And all 6 years at OSHA, I got to do Montage and musical theater. So I got sort of the best of both worlds in that sense, where I was training with the popular music students and teachers in Montage and getting my acting training and my musical theater training through the conservatory that I was in. And I hadn't even done a musical until the summer after my first year at OSHA.
What was your
I
first
did
musical?
Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
That's a first for a lot of people. It's a good first one.
I was Judah.
Judah. Yes.
The Benjamin's Calypso, right?
Yes.
That's the song he sings.
Yes. Yep. Oh,
and there were no microphones. Yeah. That was my first ever theater experience. I was this tiny little 7th going into 8th grader at the front of the stage with no microphone, singing over a track, Benjamin's Calypso. Oh no, not he.
I love that show. That's a show.
It's a great show. I had fun doing it.
It is fun. Hey, I have a question because you mentioned popular music and sort of wanting to go into that side of things to begin with. And that's something I actually learned about you later on. Totally tracks now. Did you play piano or guitar before coming to OSHA, or was that something you sort of found when you came to school and kind of jumped into that world?
Yeah, so I started taking voice lessons around the end of my 4th grade year, beginning of my 5th grade year. And then in my 6th grade year, I started taking guitar lessons. So I was 10, 11 years old. And so I had only been playing guitar for about 6 to 8 months when I first got to OSHA, I want to say. And I taught myself piano my first year at OSHA in 7th grade.
He would come in my room all the time and just want to play the piano. Like it would be, he's that kid. Like, you know, you're a teacher and you got 5 minutes to yourself and here's sweet Jared. Hey, can I come in and play? I'm like, of course you can. Like you would always be in there playing and with all your friends and singing. I love that.
100%. And it's funny because I didn't teach myself any good technique at all. I just Googled piano chords, and it was like the first image that popped up where it was multiple pictures of different keyboards with different keys highlighted telling me which chord was which. And because I played guitar, I knew the names of all these chords.
Yeah.
So then I just memorized where I had to put my hands, which then taught me the different keys of the keyboard.
But you know what? Christopher might kill me for saying this, but I think there's 2 different ways to learn it. The fact that you just said sophomore year, I learned theory. So you did get there. I think like my daughter is taking piano lessons right now. And when I took piano when I was younger, it was very, very theory based. I was learning all the theory. Yeah. She's sort of learning it more through the chords. And at first I was like, hold on. But I think if you can get to the same point, like you said, if you had just done your chords and sort of done your own thing, but then it opened it up to you where you started seeing the importance of, I also need to learn this other side. Now, Christopher over here is probably ready to punch me out of this frame. But I will say, I think it depends on the kid and depends on what you want to do. And I didn't know that's how you learned either. I didn't realize you taught yourself.
And that's what I was going to say as
100%,
well.
because
is that when it depends on what your goals are and everything else. Like, if you are trying to win the Clyburn competition at age 7, that's not going to get you there.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to play
100%.
Mary Had a Little Lamb and also like accompany yourself on a waitress song, because there's only 2 chords.
Oh no, that's my favorite part of this episode so far. That's my favorite part of this episode so far. Did you do that just for me?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it.
So anyway, you could successfully do that as well.
No, you're right. And that's why I learned piano. I mean, that's why I learned guitar too in the first place, was to just accompany myself because I just wanted to sing. And it wasn't until I vividly remember this. So fast forward a few years, I had done a few musicals at OSHA my freshman year, and that's when I met Sharna. Was my freshman year of OSHA. I did Titanic in the fall, and then in the spring we did Children of Eden together, and that was the first
One of my
musical I did
favorite
with you.
shows ever. And Jared was
It's such a good
fantastic.
show, and I had such a good time doing that show.
Aw.
We still talk about it. All my friends that I that were in that cast with me that I still see, we talk about that show.
I love that. It
but,
was a special show for me too. I feel like the cast was really, really strong. And it was the first time at OSHA where
yeah.
like we had a good combination of everyone taking it really seriously, but everyone also having a really good time. Like I felt like there was a really great
we
mix
all
of
like
that
goofed
in that
around, but we
cast.
also really wanted to put on a good show.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, you gotta pay attention and work hard if you want to put on a good show, but then also understand that you're here because you love theater and it's fun. So
Yeah. I know. Jared, can
but,
you tell them
then
about how you
the
got
next
into
year
dancing?
After that, my sophomore year. Oh, how I got into dancing?
Well, because that's part of musical theater. So, like, how did you get into like that,
Yeah.
portion of musical theater?
As we always like to say here,
that was
podcast,
Gemma Hebson.
There you go.
Yeah.
Musical theater is not just singing, not just dancing, not just acting,
Yep.
but you have to do all three, and more importantly, at the same time.
100%.
At the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that was also Gemma Hebson was my jazz 1, my 7th grade year. That was block 1. I still remember it was block 1 on my Blue Days. And we did Skyscrapers by Demi Lovato.
He knows all the numbers.
And oh man, what's the Bruno Mars one that we did my senior year, Sharna, in Tap?
Uptown Funk?
We did Runaway Baby, and that was also my first ever showcase was Jazz 1 Runaway Baby. But that was my first ever real exposure to me doing dance. And I knew that I wasn't great at it, but I was like, it's fun. It's a great way to like get exercise, and it's a part of like what I'm learning here. So that's what I was doing. My next 2 years, I did Jazz 2 as well. I did 2 years of Jazz 2. And then my sophomore year, I was like, you know what? I want to do something different. And I signed up for Ballet 1.
Yes, this is what I remember. This is what I remember, seeing you doing ballet. And I remember walking by the room being like, you guys, Jared Machado is doing ballet. And I was so proud of you. I was so proud of you.
I loved it. That was one of my favorite dance forms I had ever done. Up to that point, including, the hip hop or any of the musical theater dance that I had done, I loved ballet. And that same year, a month after I started doing ballet, I got cast in a chorus line. And I went up to Marlene Hall, who was my ballet teacher, and I said, you need to help me because I don't know what I'm doing. So she worked with me. I showed her the choreography, and she would help and give me pointers. She would work extra hard on me, and she was really hard on me because I asked her to be on any of the exercises we were doing, and really just pushing me. And it was always with love. It was never like she was hard and it made me want to go home and cry. Yeah. She was hard on me in a way that I knew that she was really taking care of me, and I really, really appreciated that. It was the same thing that both Krista Rodriguez, who was directing Chorus Line for us, and the choreographer Ryan, they both helped so much. Where I would ask to stay after rehearsal some days, and they would be willing to let me and to go over some of the dances with me because I was like, I want to make sure I know what I'm doing.
And that's exactly what I was going to comment on. Is I love that you had very little dance experience, and any performer who knows a chorus line or has seen a chorus line is like, I'm sorry, what? That's like goals, dreams and goals for dancers. But you didn't go in and just, hey, I'm going to wing it. It's fine. They cast me. I can act, I can sing, and I'll get by. You really worked hard at it. And that's exactly what you did in my tap class. So when he came into my tap class, he was like, had no tap experience, and it was tap 2, I think, at least, maybe, yeah, tap 2. And I was like, he has not
tap
had
2.
tap 1. And I told you, I remember, Jared, when you came in, I was like, look, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. And if you can kind of pick it up enough, I know you're a hard worker. And that's exactly what you did. You'd stay after class. You'd come in early. You'd come ahead of time. You're like, am I doing? And I think your musicality and sort of understanding of rhythm and sound helped, but it's also your work ethic.
Mhm.
And you're coming in, you're asking teachers for help. You're staying late. You want to do it. You're not trying to skate by. And I think that's a really, really good quality of performers, but of people in general. And I think definitely has probably gotten you pretty far in your career so far, for sure.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, and that's part of what drove me to get more comfortable with music theory. Was I didn't put in that work, and I did sort of skate by on a performance that I did with Taryn Schaefer, who was conducting us at the Art School Network in Colorado that we did. And our school was performing different numbers from West Side Story. And for whatever reason, they chose me to be Riff in this little thing, which
we went from immigrant bellman to Riff. What is happening?
To one of the whitest boys in musical theater. Yes,
you know how many riffs we have at OSHA? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So we had Gianni. We had Gianni in that cast with us. So
who did he play? Don't say Bernardo or I quit the play.
No, he was just one of the boys.
Okay.
He was just one of the Jets. So, but we did Cool, and then we did the quintet. And in the Tonight Quintet, the part that I was singing is in 5/4.
So for all the people listening, that means that there is 5 beats and a measure. If you don't know music, that's okay. But
no,
it's like
but
one.
that's
and the
hard.
quarter note gets 1 beat.
It's like a special feeling that doesn't feel right in your
Correct.
soul. It's like yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yes.
It's like in Evita with the money song.
And I had never studied
rolling,
theory.
rolling.
There's a lot of musical theater pieces in 5/4, or that are in 3/4 that transition to 2/4, which is pretty much just 5/4. But
or things that should be written in 12/8 that are written in 4/4.
You guys, this is what happens when musical people get on this podcast. I'm about ready to do a time step here and get a cocktail. Okay, carry on, gentlemen. Carry on.
But my point to saying that was also that happens in Waitress. Things that should be written in different time signatures. That's all I'm saying.
well, Bad Idea is written in 6/4, which is a time signature I hardly see. I never see 6/4, but it is in 6/4.
Yeah.
Bad Idea.
This moment is making me really happy right now. You guys are totally nerding out over time signatures. What is going on? Okay, back to the plot.
Okay.
Jared was struggling because
so
he was cast as Riff.
I struggled big time. And there were actually a couple of times during our rehearsal with the entire orchestra that we had to stop and I had to go back because I missed my entrance or I came in a little too early. I wasn't counting correctly. And I felt so bad. And I was so embarrassed because I was like, I'm literally letting everybody down in this moment because I don't know my stuff. And so I found Taryn after that tech rehearsal and like the little bit of a break that we had. And I was like, what am I doing? What do I need to do before we perform this in front of a full theater of people that have flown to Denver to watch us? Like, what do I do? And he sat down with me and really gave me a great crash course on, beat and rhythm and some basic theory that I needed. And then I was taking theory that year in musical theater, and I found that I really loved it. It wasn't just something that was like, oh my God, I have to do this because I feel bad, or I have to do this because it's going to help me later on. I loved it. And I did a lot of my own research, and I spent a lot of my own free time on different theory websites, like doing different exercises just to test myself. There's an app that I have called Tenuto, which is the app version of musictheory.net, which gives you everything for free. Just use the browser version. It's free online.
Wait, so what's on the app? What is it about?
The app is pretty much the same exact thing as musictheory.net. It's just with the convenience of having it on your phone, and they charge you $4.99, I think.
Like a month?
It's
or
not that
total?
expensive. Total.
Okay, because I was about to be like, hello, no.
But I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but they have like staff identification, staff construction, keyboard. You have ear training, all of that stuff. So I would just spend my time doing that.
Jared, if you took my theory class today, that is exactly what you'd be doing most of your day in my class, is on musictheory.net doing exercises.
And that's what I do when I teach theory as well. I pull up musictheory.net. I have them go through these different exercises, and it's really customizable too. So if you need to like change it based on your level of knowledge, it's very easy to do that. And so that really helped me. Although the one thing that my brain never enjoyed, and I still look at it and I get anxiety looking at it, is the circle of fifths. I think it is the most poorly constructed visually thing ever.
Here's the thing. Circle of fifths. Everyone, again, I say this often, please don't write me hate mail. I'm not interested in the hate mail. However, I personally think the circle of fifths is a waste of time. I hate the circle of fifths. It's annoying. It makes no sense to me.
Thank you.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I understand exactly how it works, but I'm like, no, that's not.
I agree.
No, thank
Same
you.
Here.
Is there a way to teach the circle of fifths in a better way? Like if you guys had to, because it's helping give information, right? Like, is there a better way to do it?
Yeah, like not using it because it's like literally the same information you get from other ways. Now, some people do like it, and I think I've noticed that singers tend to appreciate the circle of fifths more than instrumentalists for some reason.
I didn't get that far in my theory journey, so I've only seen the circle of fifths when I walk into the musicianship class that I teach, and the kids are like, we're doing this. It's called the circle of fifths. And I'm like, is everyone going to live? Is everyone going to be okay?
Yeah, they are. They did.
Maybe not.
Jared's like, I'm out.
Jared is scarred from the circle of fifths.
I did something different because right away I knew the circle of fifths was not going to work for me. Also, I haven't said it on the podcast yet, but if you know me, you know I have ADHD because I always tell people that immediately. But I think that factored into my not enjoying the circle of fifths.
I could see that.
So I created the line of fifths.
Oh, I was like, he's about to create his own thing.
Yeah, he's doing it in live time. Hey, I have a question while you're searching your notes for your line of fifths.
Yes.
Your love of theory and music theory, where do you feel like that led you? From I mean, I want to get to, I think where I'm going is like, you kind of after high school had a lot of different journeys that I talked to you about several times, but it's something I really love. I love it. I honestly love when people don't, and most people don't, they don't have this little path that's perfectly carved for them and they go away.
No.
But I think a lot of our listeners, if they are sort of in that moment of like, oh, I'm going to be a senior, or I'm looking to my future and this is what I'm going to do. I think it's so great to sort of hear how someone like you, who clearly got through high school, sort of knowing what you wanted to do or be in whatever area, and then kind of how you landed where you are now. Because I think in the last, I mean, what year did you graduate, Jared? What year did you graduate?
2017.
Okay. Since then, that is not a very long period of time. That's 7 years, and pepper in COVID, where everyone was doing absolutely nothing. You have done so much, like your voiceover work, you know, your Buena Vista Social Club, your shows even here in Orange County that I've seen that were stellar. And you went to college for a bit. I'd love to hear that story about how that didn't work for you, because I know the story, but I think our listeners would like to hear it too.
I don't know the story, so tell me.
100%. So really quickly, because I found it before I move on. Is it backwards?
It's fine.
No, it's good.
Is it backwards on you, or can you read it?
We see it normal.
Okay.
We're all good.
So it's a number line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The numbers correspond to the number of sharps and the number of flats. The sharp keys are on the top. The flat keys are on the bottom.
Oh.
If there are 3 sharps, all you need to do is go to the 3 and then look up for the sharps. You're in the key of A. If there are 5 flats, you go to the 5, go down, you're in the key of D flat. That's it. And then if you need to know what keys you play that are sharp in the key of B sharp, look at all of the things that are sharp up to it.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me.
So here's my question. How do you, or did you just memorize like the top line, what the sharp keys are and what the flat keys are? Because
well, I went up in fifths, so it's still
so
the
circle
line of
of fifths. This
fifths.
is now line
so
of
it's
fifths.
still G, and then up a 5 is D, up a fifth is A, up a fifth is E, and so you just keep going, and it's the same thing, just in a line format as opposed to in a circle where everything overlaps and nothing makes sense. So
Such a hater.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this episode because the musical people are making me happy. Like you guys are totally nerding out on the circle line of fifths, and I like it.
Yeah.
Oh man, but yeah, so that was my junior, like sophomore, junior year. Got really into theory, all that stuff. My senior year, I did actor showcase, and that was when I was like, "Oh, filming TV is actually something that is an interesting possibility for me." And I started meeting with agents and managers in the spring of my senior year after doing my senior showcase. I am still with the same manager that signed with me after I did my showcase at OSHA.
Oh, wow.
Laura Hirsch with Industry Entertainment. She's incredible. She's amazing. She actually has a couple of other previous OSHA students that are signed on with her as well. She's awesome. She's been nothing but amazing since I signed with her, but that was a career path that I didn't even consider until my mom pushed me to audition for Actor Showcase. And then I was like, oh, acting professionally now is something that I could do.
Also,
but
shout
I
out
knew I
to
wanted
the great Kathy Machado. We're taking a minute
Yes,
for her.
Kathy Machado.
I love me some Kathy
yeah.
McAdoo.
Same here. Same here. She's
I
just
think
in
we
the
all
other
do.
room.
We're all in agreement on this podcast.
She is a gem. Love you, Kathy.
Love you, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I knew I wanted to go to college, and that's what I told every agent and manager that I met with. And that's Laura said she was cool with that when I signed with her. I was like, I want to go to college. And my college journey was a little different because, like I said, I have ADHD, and I struggled a little bit with certain courses more than others. I failed AP Lang at OSHA. I finished the class with an F, and I was able to retake it over the summer, and I finished the class with a B, which was great. All of the math classes I took at OSHA, I never got above high C, low B on any of the math classes I had. So I ended up in my senior year with like a 3.35 GPA, which is good.
Yeah.
And I was
That's
proud of that.
terrible, Jared. How dare you only
but
get a 3.35?
When you're at OSHA and half
I
of the
know.
kids around you all
Yes.
have 4.0 or 4.5s,
I know, it's crazy.
3.35 does feel a little bad.
Yeah, and I'm here to say that I dislike that. It is a good GPA,
I agree.
and a C used to be a passing grade, and a B was a good grade. And now it's like if you get a B or a C,
Right.
everyone's looking at you like you're crazy.
100%. There is so much pressure on all students everywhere. I mean, even working in the Laguna Beach school district, I saw it. Working at OSHA, I still see it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Unnecessary.
it was true when I was there, and it's true when I'm teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, very unnecessary. I agree. But I, because of that, when I was figuring out what colleges to go for, I sort of only wanted to audition for 3 or 4, but my dad made me pick 10 colleges to apply for, just out of safety. And the schools that I was accepted into academically actually surprised me. I was accepted into more schools academically than I thought I would be. And I was waitlisted as a musical theater student to almost every school I went out for. The schools that I got into the theater program and was accepted academically were Chapman and University of Arizona. Those were the 2 schools that I was accepted into fully academically and a member of the BFA that I'd applied for. I had briefly worked with some of the professors at U of A in a master class they did at OSHA during our like college fair week. And they coached me on my college audition stuff. And I found that I really enjoyed their teaching style. And we ended up exchanging phone numbers and kept in contact. And so when I went to audition, I felt like we knew each other. They knew me, I knew them. And there was like an actual feeling of camaraderie in a way
Yeah.
that I didn't feel from really any other school. There were a couple of schools that I went to the audition room and I was like, I am just a number. You don't know me. You don't see me right now. I am just the number on the application. And as soon as I walk out of this room, you won't recognize me tomorrow if we walked down the street and bumped into each other. I did not feel that way at Chapman. I did not feel that way at U of A. But what it really came down to was I wanted to leave California. So I ended up going to U of A, in part because it was out of state and I really enjoyed the professors and the teaching style over there. And I liked the campus. I had been and visited the campus, so I had seen it. I got to U of A and immediately started struggling really hard on my gen ed classes, which were really easy. I was taking ballet 1. I was taking
You're a ballet pro.
English
Come on,
101.
man. You're a ballet
I know,
pro.
right? And astronomy 1. So I was taking intro level classes, and astronomy and English should have been very easy for me because I enjoy those subjects. And ballet 1 should have been easy because I had done it already. I started not showing up to my ballet class. Part of it was an 8 a.m. class, and it was all the way on the other side of campus. So that sucked, having to walk 15 minutes out of my dorm, go all the way across campus to be there by like 7:55 so I could get in class to get started by 8. I didn't like that. And I was bored out of my mind because I knew all of the concepts already because I had taken 2 years of ballet at OSHA.
So then why couldn't you test out of it?
Because I didn't think about it.
Oh.
Because I was so stuck in this mentality of I am stuck and I am forced into this. And I might, who knows, I might have even gotten a W or failed at having to withdraw. And because if you withdraw past a certain date,
Right.
it shows up on your transcript records. So
Yeah.
I might have actually been stuck.
I think I told this story on the podcast, but if I didn't, I'm going to tell it now. And if I did, you can fast forward a minute and a half. But I think to this day, I have an F on my transcript from college, and you'll never guess what.
Music theory.
Music Theory 1.
No way.
Music Theory 1, because I took it at the JC and I was like, no, this is dumb. And so I talked to the professor and I was like, I'm out of here. He's like, great, cool. Apparently it was after the drop date and nobody told me until my grades came out. And I was like, I'm sorry, what now? Come again?
Dang.
And I never took the class again. So you couldn't replace the grade because when I transferred, I just tested straight into Theory 2. And I was like, bye.
Right.
But they were also like, when I transferred, Point Loma was like, can we talk about this F in Theory 1? I'm like, we can talk about it and I'll tell you exactly what it is. And then I'll take the placement test and you'll put me right into Theory 2. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That sucks.
Exactly. And I tested out of theory at U of A too. I
See?
took a placement activity
did think
and I
about
did not have to
testing
take
out
a
of
single theory class while
Yeah.
I was there.
Nice.
But I failed pretty much every gen ed that I was taking my freshman year of college. And I had a 4.0 in my BFA. I had 100% in pretty much every class. And those were arguably way harder than any of the gen ed classes that I was taking. They were far more time consuming. The amount of work that I had to do was more robust. I was turning in more essays and more papers far more often than I was in any other class. But I had a 4.0. And I was just at a loss as to why it was happening. I was very upset at myself. I started falling into a little bit of a depression because I was so confused as to why I was doing this to myself, is what it felt like. Even knowing how important it was to succeed at a higher institution, especially when it was $50,000 a year for tuition and room and board. So I came home after first semester having failed pretty much every class except for my BFA, and came back second semester taking a little bit of easier classes, but also classes that I would enjoy more. One of them was a music history class, which I ended up passing with an A. While I was back at U of A second semester, that's when I started doing a little bit more creative writing than I had done in previous years. And so I had followed a few like writing blogs on Tumblr. And one of the master posts that someone had put up was how to write characters with different disabilities. And one of the first disabilities up there, because of the letters, is ADHD. So that was one of the first things I saw, one of the first articles I read on this blog. I clicked on it. And as I'm reading through how symptoms present themselves and how individuals with ADHD interact with the world and people around them, I was like, whoa, this is really familiar. What's going on here? And I found some online diagnostic tests, and I was scoring really high for probability of having ADHD. And it started to sort of make sense as to why I was struggling so much with certain classes and then succeeding way more with harder classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my parents and I was like, hey, I think I might have ADHD. I want to get tested over the summer when I get back. I got tested. Sure enough, I was diagnosed with ADHD combined, which is both hyperactive and inattentive. I have every symptom of the inattentive and 6 out of the 7 of the hyperactive.
So it's like double whammy.
Yeah.
I know. And I'm considered moderate to severe on the scale, which means that it really impacts my day-to-day life and how I interact with the world. Knowing that about myself, I applied to now the disability resources at U of A and applied for a probationary period because I was going to lose my scholarship due to my grades. I was granted permission for the probation, which means I would keep my scholarship for the first fall semester of sophomore year, so long as I maintained a certain GPA and I gave evidence that I was working to improve my situation with my ADHD. So I started taking different medications, and all of them helped. All of them also sucked in that I had some of the worst symptoms from pretty much every one of the medications that I was testing out. But they did help most of my symptoms. I remember describing to my friends that it felt like when an AC is on in a building that you walk into, so you don't notice that it's on until it turns off. And then you're like, oh, there was a fan on in this building.
Yeah.
Losing some symptoms that I had not realized were symptoms, I just thought were me. I realized that I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, I do have ADHD. I do have these things that this medication is helping me manage.
How interesting, Jared, that you found that all out from some blog. Like something that drastic and life-changing, and clearly the way you speak about it has changed a lot for you. And what if, like, I don't know, my brain goes to like, what if you had never been on that blog? Where, like, that moment that you were able to see that, and then the process you've gone through, medications and figuring out what works for you, but the changes that you've seen, that's crazy.
And you know, like I said, the medication.
He was just singing. He's just singing.
This is a musical theater podcast. I mean, we have to do that every once in a while, right? Exactly. But I mean, like I said, medication isn't also just like a fix-all. It didn't actually, it didn't help the way that I thought it was going to, because the psychiatrist I was working with was in California and I was here in Arizona, and the only contact we had was, how is this medication working? Okay, here's a new one with a different dosage. Try this new medication for a couple of weeks, then get back to me and tell me how that one worked. And then here's a new medication, and then, you know, rinse and repeat. And so my mental health was taking a huge hit because I was just changing the chemical balances in my brain weekly at this point, which was affecting me just in life. And then because of that, my grades were still slipping. And so then I felt even angrier and more depressed and more upset at myself because I was still failing, even with what I thought was supposed to be this magical fix of figuring this out and then getting medicated. And so by the end of the first semester, or toward the end of the first semester, finals were coming up, and I was like, even if I get 100% on these finals that are coming up, I will not pass these classes.
Yeah.
And I remember calling my parents in tears and just being like, I have to drop out. I'm going to lose a scholarship. I'm not going to be able to continue. And that's just going to be it. And it sucks right now saying this, but I know that this is what's going to be what's best for me. And so I came home for winter break. We did everything we needed to do. I finished out the year for the spring semester. and to sort of give me closure with the classmates that I had there and the professors and the relationships that I had formed with everyone. And that was one of my favorite semesters in college because the pressure was gone.
Yeah.
I got to just enjoy my time in the BFA. I think I was taking one academic class that semester because I was like, what's the point of taking another one if I know I'm just going to transfer anyway? And I haven't figured things out yet. So after I left U of A, I went right back to working with different medical professionals. I met with a different psychologist this time and a neurologist that were in the same office building. And the three of us worked together in tandem to find the right medication that worked for me, which ended up being Wellbutrin, which is a bupropion drug, which targets the norepinephrine neurotransmitter in your brain. All of the other medications I was taking are dopamine targeters, which basically there are 3 different neurotransmitters and neuroreceptors that are affected by ADHD: norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. We had only tried dopamine supplements, and so I told my neurologist, I was like, why don't we try another one of the neurotransmitters like norepinephrine or serotonin, because we haven't tried that yet. So putting me on Wellbutrin ended up helping me with my symptoms enough that I could not only be able to sit and take notes in class, I was able to succeed in academic work that I didn't enjoy. Although I did notice that it affected my ability to be creative.
It's a testament too for like advocating for yourself, right? I feel like it
100%.
so easily could have gone a different route for you where like, okay, this is what I have to deal with. This is, you know, I'm just going to deal with it. And I don't want to say proud of you. That's not the right word. I think it's admirable. And I think anyone who's listening, it doesn't have to be ADHD. It could be anything. And I think when you realize like, this is
100%.
not how I should be functioning and I need help. I mean, I've heard this story before, so I know the story, but when you just talked about when you had to call your parents and say like, I can't do this. That's so for what you're 19, 20 years old to be able to know
I was
this is really
19
hard.
years old.
19. Yeah. This is really hard, but this is what I have to do. This is difficult, but I need to find the doctors and the people who are going to give me the right stuff. This is a difficult thing. I mean, that's perseverance. That is huge. And I think that it is just a testament of like that. I have to not fend for myself, but really be the one that is, hey, this is not right. This is not what it needs to be.
100%.
And
for everything you need to. I mean, the neurologist was ready to tell me I didn't have ADHD after doing a single diagnostic test on his own because of the way that I scored. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, hang on. This is something that's very important to me.
Yeah.
If you have ADHD or if you're on the spectrum, there are also things that are either called special interests or hyperfixations, depending on where you fall under the branch. There's a lot of similarities between ADHD. A lot of people that are on the spectrum also have ADHD, and same vice versa for ADHD and people on the spectrum. When you have those hyperfixations or those special interests, you can hyperfocus, which means that even if it's a task that requires a lot of focus and a lot of energy, if it's something that is piquing your brain's interest in that moment, you don't need the extra help to do it. Because ADHD is an interest-based nervous system, meaning that we don't get the reward system if we're not interested. But if it's something we enjoy, we do get that reward system. It does work. We get those chemicals in our brain that other people that are neurotypical or that don't have ADHD do get on their own. So when I got diagnosed with ADHD itself became a hyperfixation of mine, where I researched nonstop about ADHD. I looked up so many different academic papers and research and videos and read and absorbed as much knowledge as I could about what was now I knew to be a part of me. So sitting down and getting this test from this neurologist, which I knew was so important because it was going to help me get my life back on track. Of course, I'm going to score well if I'm really, really trying hard because this is that important to me.
Yeah.
Again, ADHD is an interest-based nervous system. If I'm that interested in succeeding and performing well, and I know that I am a fairly intelligent person, why wouldn't I succeed? Why wouldn't I do passable? on an exam like that.
I'm gonna
So,
like not
that
I am
self-advocation there.
interrupting, but
Yeah.
can I want to, we're going to run out of time. So I want to ask you something, but this totally sort of segues. This whole idea.
Yes.
I've learned more about ADHD even in this second conversation with you, because the first time we had the conversation, I was like, this is very intriguing to me. And can we cut to your recent amazing opportunity in New York with Buena Vista Social Club? How, or voiceover or whatever, this whole hyperfixation or the interest thing and wanting to do well, do you find now that you know you have this, that you see it in your work? Does it transfer over into when you're doing a show
100%.
or when you're working on a voiceover? Like, can you explain that to me? Because that is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like the connection or the crossover.
100%. There are of course times that even if it's a task that I love, like acting, like performing, I have a hard time doing it. And again, that's just the ADHD. And there are ways that I can trick myself into doing things and, other things like that through working with the psychologist and the neurologist, I've figured out different strategies to work with myself and trick my own brain. But for the most part, when it comes to the work that I do, whether that's teaching or acting and performing, I do find that ADHD motor helps me with those passions. I have found that there is not a single day that if I have to lesson plan or if I show up to teach and work with students, even if I'm like exhausted from the night before from working, I never feel like I am not present in this moment, or I never feel like, oh my God, this is like pulling teeth to get me to do this. And it's, I think that, again, that interest, that passion, that love for what I get to do, that drives me there. And the same thing goes for the performing aspect of it. When, like you were saying, when I was doing shows here in Orange County, I was working in Laguna Beach from 7 a.m. to 1:45 p.m., driving straight to OSHA to teach 8th and 9th block from 2:15 until 5 p.m. And then I would have about 45 minutes to go home and rest, eat a quick dinner, and then go straight to the theater for rehearsal until 11 p.m., get home around midnight, go to sleep, wake up 5 hours later and do it all over again. But it was sustainable in a way that, of course, I wouldn't want to have to do that forever. But in the, month or two that I had to do that, I was able to survive and do it.
And I came in to watch you teach during that time. And, we didn't talk a lot about your teaching, but for those of you who don't know, Jared came back to teach. He taught for me in my conservatory and I was so excited. Oh, yeah. But I will say I get a little, not nervous, but sort of like, I wonder how this student of mine, who's now an adult, is going to be as a teacher, because I've hired quite a few alumni. And it is really wonderful to watch that moment of seeing someone step into the teaching shoes. And like you said, always prepared. Every time I came into your classroom, and I came in a lot because you were new and also you're teaching a new subject for me. And I just wanted to see. And the kids were always engaged. You're always so good with the kids, always ready. And again, knowing your schedule and all the other things that you were juggling, that is a testament to your personality and working hard. But clearly, you as a person. And then I went to go see both of your shows you did at the Chance, and you crushed it. Like, it's not like you were tuning anything in, phoning anything in. You know what I mean? Like, you were completely present and completely successful in each of those areas. But maybe that is why you get sick when you take a vacation.
Well,
if that was your schedule.
It absolutely is. But that's also why the ADHD is my superpower.
Yeah. I love that.
It's that.
I love that.
It is 100%. And I also think that ADHD is kind of poorly named. It's attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder is the full thing.
I agree.
Because it's not a deficit of attention. It's an inability to focus the excess attention that you have. You have too much attention that you don't know where to put it. So it's not that you don't have enough attention to put on a single task. You have too much going on. You're aware of everything around you.
Yeah, you just can't
at all times.
Minimize it and
you can't focus. You can't focus it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why fidget spinners were huge when they were, is because they started out as specifically a tool for students with ADHD and students on the spectrum, or students that needed to stim if they have anxiety or depression or something else that they needed to stim. that tactile sensation was able to take some of that attention away from focusing on the conversation happening 3 tables behind the student, or to pull in whatever daydream was happening over here and use that subconsciousness instead to spin this thing in their hands, so that they can actually use their forefront and their actual attention on the task at hand, what they needed to do. So it's not a deficit of attention, but rather too much attention that you can't focus. And so that's where the ADHD as a superpower comes for me, is the being able to juggle all of those things at once and not have to feel like I am giving up the quality of any one thing. Partly again, because I am just so much in love with all of the work I get to do. But also just because I need that because of the amount of attention I have. If I don't have at least 3 different things that I'm doing at once, I'm not going to be able to sit down and really focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Hey, I have, I'm stealing the microphone. Christopher's just here as my sidekick.
Yep.
I have like a fire round of questions I want to ask you before we
let's
go, but I don't, Christopher,
Speed
do
round.
you want to jump
really
in?
wanna hear about New York.
Oh, okay. Well then wait, talk about that first before I fire my questions. Can you talk about, your
100%.
Buena Vista Social Club? That was a very recent, exciting adventure
Yes.
for you. We'd love to hear about that.
It was. So with Laura, I had been auditioning for film and TV stuff since I graduated OSHA. And I had specifically said I wanted to stay away from theater because I got to college and sort of lost my self-esteem and my confidence as a theater performer. And I really felt like I'm an actor, not a singer, not a musician anymore. I'm not up to the caliber as a lot of the students at U of A were. So I'm like, I'm just an actor. So I focused on film and TV, and then the strikes happened and we were getting 0 auditions during the strikes. I'm not a member of SAG, but
still,
the Writers Guild was on strike, the Directors Guild. Even if I was offered a job, if it was a studio that was being struck, I wouldn't have taken it because that would be, scabbing, and that's not what I want to do. So, work's really slowed down for us. And Laura said, "Hey, there's a theater opportunity. I think we should go for it. Just see what happens." And then I get the email, and it's for Buena Vista Social Club, which for people who don't know is a band from the the name comes from the actual social club, the Buena Vista in Cuba from the 1950s. And this was just before the revolution of Castro and before the communists took over. And this was a place specifically for Black performers and performers of color living in Cuba, because the country at the time was still very segregated. And the Buena Vista Social Club was specifically for people of color. And right after Castro came into power, he demolished all of the social clubs in the entire country and then created the Department of Music. So every single musician had to register with the government to perform music. Then most of them fell into obscurity because they couldn't make money anymore because of the way that it worked now in Cuba. And but some of them still had their records being played everywhere. One of those people being Omar Portuondo, who is still one of the most popular performers to come out of Cuba ever. Another one was Compay Segundo, who's has got a very popular couple of songs that have made it in the U.S. as well. And there were a few producers, one of them being Juan de Marcos, who is from Cuba, another one being Ry Cooder from America, who came together to record I think it was like an African-inspired record, and I can't remember if that's exactly true, but they had to fly into America to then fly to Cuba to record, but they messed up with their passports and they weren't able to get to Cuba. So they were like, what do? We don't know what to record. And the musicians they had hired said, hey, there's some people that record here in this building that were big in the 50s. Why don't we get them together? And so they got all these musicians together that were like the all-stars from the 50s and recorded the album called the Buena Vista Social Club, named after the social club that most of them had performed in their youth. And it was ridiculously popular in 1996. I'm pretty sure it won the Grammy for Best World Album, if I remember correctly, when it was released. And it was so popular that Wim Wenders made a documentary about it in 1999, which won an Oscar for the documentary. And the musical told that story of the 1950s when the social club was around just before and during the revolution, and the 1990s when these same musicians 40 years later were recording the album of the same music.
Oh, cool.
And the
So it
role
tells
that I
both,
was offered
it tells both
was-
stories, like the 50s and then
It does. The role that I was offered was in the 1950s as Young Compay Segundo. And this was especially special for me because I'm Cuban. My dad was born in Cuba. And my grandparents lived through the revolution. So that was something that was very personal to me and my family's history as well. And so when I got the audition, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to submit for this. And I was very lucky that I was cast. It was a very fast process. I got the audition, and less than a month later, I was living in New York and I had my first rehearsal. So it was very, very fast. And I connected to my heritage that I never had before. I remembered I talked to the choreographer, who is also Cuban American, and she was born in Florida. And we both connected in the sense that we said, like, you know, we never really felt Cuban growing up. We felt like, you know, Americans that had Cuban families.
Yeah.
And for me, it was connecting to this show. For her, it was choreographing music and choreographing Cuban style and connecting to her heritage through her dance. And for me, it was through this show and being surrounded by my people that allowed me to really connect in a way that made me, for the first time, really feel Cuban American as opposed to American and a little bit of Cuban. And I learned how to play Cuban song on guitar, which is very strange for the musicians. The downbeat is on the 4.
Uh-oh.
It's not on the
Okay,
1.
Can we talk about the fact that
So-
that is not a downbeat then? Incorrect.
But it is.
But it is.
So, Jared,
that
okay,
is the downbeat.
My husband is Mexican. You've met
Yeah.
Sir Jerry Lopez. And I will never forget the first time we went salsa dancing. And I was like, oh, this is not going to work out. We cannot be together. I was like, we step on the 1, you know, I'm like 1. And they do the same thing. Like if you ever watch ballroom dancing or salsa social dancing, they don't follow this kind of I don't want to say traditional musicians, but the music we grew up with and the way, especially a dancer, an American dancer, I am like, this is making everything in my body. But I remember my husband saying to me one time, like, why are you even counting? And it's true, because that music, it is meant to just be felt.
You can't count.
Yes.
You can't count.
Well, that was very hard for Sharna Lee, who counts everything. I was like, I'm sorry,
5,
this is
6,
a 1.
7, 8.
Yeah. And right. And now I'm coming from my theory background and I'm playing guitar, and the voice still follows the normal 4/4 structure that I'm used to. So the song that I sang was Que bueno baila usted. And so the rhythm for my voice was Castellano, que bueno baila usted, da, 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 da. Pero que rico, que bueno, que sabroso bailaba. Right, that follows the normal rhythm that we're used to. But the guitar was
That's exactly my problem.
So all
and the
that is
dancing would
coming in
follow
on
the
4.
guitar and not the vocals, and it makes my brain crazy.
And I have to sing in what I'm used to and play in what I'm not. And so that was one of the hardest things for me in that show, was learning how to play in a Cuban son style while singing in a style that was more familiar to me, at least rhythmically.
How interesting for you,
and
though,
I-
to
it wasn't
experience that.
until-
Like how
It was so
you-
cool. And
you
it-
probably didn't even think of that when you're like, oh, I got this gig and how exciting. And then
No.
you're like, oh, shoot, I'm gonna have to learn this thing. Like, this is not what I'm used to.
I'll
That's
have
awesome.
to play you. I'll have to play you some voice memos the next time I see you of the
Yes.
rehearsal process.
And I also need to like go over that song with you. I need to break it down. I need to break it down.
Yes,
'cause
I
I'm
would
not
love-
Circle of
100%
fifths, circle of
convinced.
fifths.
I love it. It's all of the songs that we did are from the album Buena Vista Social Club. So if you want to hear any of the music that we did, it's on that album. But it didn't click for me rhythmically until our second week of previews. I had already done like
Dear.
9 or 10
Jared
shows.
can fake it till you make it.
and then
though.
I was like,
he'd be fine.
Oh, I
That's
get
what it's
it now.
supposed to be.
Like it was so robotic. Or I was like 4, and then singing,
Yeah.
like 4. Castellano, like so robotic. And then in our second week of previews, I started playing, and I was like, oh my god, I get it. I get the strumming pattern, I get the rhythm, and now I can just have fun.
Oh,
And I had some friends who flew out to see the show, and that was always what I got from my friends who were able to watch the show. Was they were just like, everyone up there was having the best time of their life. Like, it was just so fun, and that's how we felt. Our closing show, I remember this. We all took our final bow, and our blocking was we're supposed to leave the stage after we bow to let the band come forward. And all of us, in tears, stayed on the stage and just like sang out the show, like with the band.
Aw.
All of us stayed on stage. And when the band was done, and normally it's like blackout, everyone's off stage. We were all just on stage laughing, hugging, crying, and all that while the audience was like walking out of the theater. Like, it was such an amazing experience that we all just became a family.
Well, and that's what's so great about live theater versus film and television and everything else. Like, yes, your work lives on forever with film and television, but there's nothing like the electricity that is there in a live performance. And like you guys said, or like you said, your friends came in there, they could just see and feel the connection and the energy.
Yeah.
And that's what
you couldn't sit still watching
Yeah.
the show. You had to move in your
Well, and
seats.
that's the thing
you
is,
know?
I'm like, it's just such a collaboration between audience and performer,
Yes.
and it's just there's nothing else like it. It's not really can't be
Oh,
really
yeah.
recreated.
and I think too, like,
Oh, yeah.
we teach a lot of younger kids. You just musically directed for me, and it's something I want them to appreciate. And I think, sometimes certain shows will do it more than others, but we tell the kids often, it's and every show is going to have a different energy and a different kind of family vibe to it, right?
100%.
Amongst the cast. And
Yep.
my favorite is actually, I like going to see shows exactly like you said, where I can't sit still, but there's something that moves me to where I'm like, I was just
Right,
part of
magical.
that for a minute.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I just got to be part of whatever special
Yeah.
thing they were doing on stage.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yes.
I wish I could have seen it, Jared.
It was so fun. And I'm not sure 100%, but it probably is going to go to Broadway. I know for a fact that if it does, I'm not attached anymore, so I can say
Aw.
that,
Yeah.
but I won't be in the show.
Oh,
But if it does move on and you have the chance, you should see it. It's a beautiful story. The music is incredible. You should 100% see it. But what you were talking about with audience too, one of our favorite performances was our student matinee that we had, because it was a whole bunch of Black and brown kids from, the Bronx and from like Jersey and from like a whole bunch of different places around New York that were bussed in to watch our show.
Mhm.
And they're all like from the ages of 14 to 16, I think is what they said. But, we walked out there and we started, and it was like really quiet. Like, you could tell that they were a little uncomfortable. They had probably never seen live theater like this. They weren't sure how they were supposed to react. And there's a joke that gets said in the show where Compay and Omara are reuniting for the first time in 40 years. They haven't seen each other in 40 years. And he says like I'll never forget the first day that I saw you. Pretty much. That's not the exact line. And she says, "Oh, you've gone soft." And he says, "Not everywhere." Sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And normally that gets a really loud laugh from the audience.
Giggling. Yep. Yeah.
And
Yep.
yes, the teenagers started cracking up, and they were hooting and hollering, all of this. And from that moment on, they were characters in the show. Every line that was said, they had a response.
Yep.
I came out and I flirted a little bit with Omara in the 1950s, and they were all, ooh, like making those noises. The sister was, she was a little antagonistic in the show, and she walked out at one point, and I heard one girl loud and clear in the audience go, "Oh Lord, here she comes." Like they were full on interacting with us, and we had a talk back with them afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, we loved that. Like the fact that you were all just in it with us felt so awesome and gave us energy that we hadn't had before, that like made us go 120%, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a very, very fun show for us, having that audience interaction.
But that's so cool. I love all of that.
I feel like here's what I want to do. I told you at the beginning we were going to have enough content for 5 podcasts. I
know
because I have so many other things that I would love to talk with you about. But I think what I want to do, because I kind of know where you're at and what you're doing, and again, as a teacher, I've just respected you these last couple of years. As a performer, as a mentor, watching you with some of these younger kids who, you know, he left OSHA and then came back, and you would have thought, I don't know, Justin Bieber. No, that's not the right person. Harry Styles. I mean, it was like Mr. Machado is arriving and we all lose our ish because the kids were like, Mr. Machado. They love you. I want to have you back on. Like, I want to wait another like 6 months and have Jared back on, because I feel like there's so much to talk about. And honestly, I wasn't even planning this whole ADHD thing. I'm super happy that you went into detail about that. I think it's something that we have not discussed. Christopher and I are not as familiar. And I think there will be a lot of listeners who are probably like, I appreciate that. I can relate to that. Yeah. But I have so many more things. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. And I know Christopher's like, I don't know the story. I need the story. So I want to have you back on. Will you come back on another podcast like in 6 months, and then we'll be like,
love to.
Okay, Jared Machado part 2. Will you do that for us?
I would love to. And one more about that ADHD is that so many actors and performers have ADHD and they don't even know it.
Yeah. I believe it.
I just need to say that.
Yeah. I believe it.
There are so many people out there.
People are getting diagnosed later. So, you know, ADHD, not to go back and discuss more, but it was a lot for young school kids. And people are seeing it now in adulthood and they're finally getting diagnosed. So I love that we went down that road in this episode.
Yeah. In the DSM, most of the language is for adolescents and for children. There's no language in the DSM for adults with ADHD. It's a very adolescent and child development disability at the moment. There's not a lot of verbiage for an adult. Like, I can't wait to take my turn is one of the diagnostic questions in the DSM. You know, it's like by the time you're in your 20s and 30s, you've probably figured out how to get yourself to wait your turn. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you're me. You know what?
Unless you're either of us, honestly. Oy vey.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think I'll also be sending this episode to a doctor to send me a Cliff's Notes version in English of many of the things you talked about. Because I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Well, that's how some people feel when you guys start talking about music theory. Some of our listeners are going to be like, oh gosh, I got to take notes and go study.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I know. Right. I took anatomy and medical applications of anatomy at OSHA. So being a doctor was another option.
Well-rounded,
Dr.
Jared.
McAdoo.
Dr. McAdoo. Yep. He'll come sing you a
Dr.
song.
McAdoo.
I love it. Well, Jared, thank you so very much for taking the time and also just kind of being
Thank
open.
you for having me.
I'm
so happy I could make it.
Of course. Okay, McAdoo part 2 coming soon.
Like,
yes.
6 months.
100%.
I love it.
All right, Charno fans. Well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at Charnopher Official. And on that note,
Charnopher out. And McAdoo. And McAdoo.
and me. Don't forget me.
We could not.
We won't. Impossible.
You're such a good
That's
interview,
awesome.
Jared. I love that you can just.
This concludes another episode of Uncommon Sense. If you're ready for more of this fresh, hilarious, and unique perspective on the world of entertainment, education, and life, be sure to subscribe right now to catch every episode. If you gasped, laughed out loud, or even snorted, share the show with your friends and aspiring entertainers because, let's be real, sharing is caring. For more Charnopher, tune in to their witty insights by checking out the website uncommonpod.com or connecting on social media. Tune in next week and get the real insider scoop on another episode of Uncommon Sense.